evening, everybody. We have a very special guest for you tonight. He graduated from Columbia University with a degree in religion and philosophy. He's a former National Geographic journalist, well-known futurist, advocate for a basic universal income, seasteading, and life extension through the radical use of technology. As the author of 3 books and numerous magazine articles, he is often sought after as a speaker and expert in the fields of transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and genetic editing. His most recent book, Upgrading America, reached #1 on Amazon in politics, which is only fitting because, oh, by the way, he's running for president in 2020. Without further ado, welcome Zoltan Istvan.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
So tell us a little bit about, what got you into, without going too long, I guess, into transhumanism and how that's going to help you as a presidential candidate.
Well, sure. Transhumanism is a social movement of many millions of people around the world that want to use science and technology to radically modify the human body and also modify the human experience. Now, it's probably not going to help me win the presidency this time around. But, there's a chance in 12 or 16 years when the real future sort of catches up with America that if I'm running again, it might actually help. I wish I could say it is helping more, but I think people find this idea of modifying one's body with technology still pretty bizarre, at least for the average candidate. That said, I think everybody around me would agree that there are just huge revolutions taking place in what it means to experience reality because of technology, whether it's implants, whether it's exoskeleton suits, whether it's, it's driverless cars, or it's even things like genetic editing. It's a very radical future we're already in and we're going into.
I think one of the most powerful discussions being had is the one that you're bringing to the table, because the other candidates that are running for president are not discussing the matters at hand, the matters that are going to be affecting us in the future, and not having the discussions in a way that they can get out in front of this technology. Did you have a specific idea of where you wanted to move to, immediately in the future? I mean, do you see any governing type aspects over this technology before it comes out or being released to the public?
Well, so, what was really interesting was in the 2016 debates, I definitely thought Hillary and Donald Trump would discuss artificial intelligence. After all, artificial intelligence is probably the most wild and radical technology out there. We're talking about a machine that might be able to think as smart as human beings within a 10 or 20-year time frame. And it's a global security concern. I mean, if North Korea discovers an AI and they can send viruses to every single computer in America, they can put us back in the dark ages. And even Vladimir Putin has said, look, whoever controls the AI age will control the world. And yet you never hear the main politicians discussing this. And the reason is because it doesn't win votes. It's kind of worrisome, this idea of artificial intelligence. And yet it's such a crucial part of the biggest companies in the world, whether it's Apple or Google or Microsoft or even Amazon. These are all companies that are leading forward with these different types of technologies, and AI is at the cusp of, and yet nobody is really putting out any kind of formal platform, no governing ideas. There's just a few nonprofits out there, but we're talking about the most radical technology humanity has ever experienced, and the government won't even open its mind to it because it doesn't win votes. It's a very sad situation.
Yeah, the only person I've ever heard really talk about it was Susan Rice, the former National Security Advisor on Bill Maher. She was talking about it. And I've heard one other person, but not in the context of a campaign for a platform or anything like that. They just talked about it like we're talking about it. It's the most important. It's the last invention mankind will ever make, is often called, will ever create. And I think that, see if you agree with me on this, I think that the first time someone makes a general artificial intelligence and it gets out on the internet is the last time, because it'll absorb every other one out there, right? I mean, it seems like that's the path it'll take, is to exponentially rise. And I don't know if that's a fact or not yet, but it sure seems that way. I think that's what most people worry about and kind of in denial of. It's almost like if you go back to the Wright brothers and there's jet planes flying overhead, but people are still going, if man were meant to fly, he'd have wings, right? You just point up and go, but look, it's here, right? And that's kind of how I feel where we're at. We're here and nobody's talking about it. So I agree 100% with what you're saying about that. Nobody's addressing it right.
One of the things too is Trump and these candidates talking about bringing back jobs to America, when and the fact of the matter is that those very same jobs they're saying they're going to bring back to America are going to be done by robotics in the future. So I mean, they're not even talking about the same world that we're living in. And I think that your platform is one that is very important to us all in the future. And so please let us know, tell us exactly. I mean, do you have, because you're a futurist, you're not just a transhumanist presidential candidate. I mean, that's part of what you're up to, but you're also a futurist, and you're also somebody that's been involved in technology for a long time.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, the three big game changers that are out there. The first two, I think everyone will understand, but the third one's a bit bizarre. So the very first one's artificial intelligence. The second one is probably the most important science of the 21st century, and that's genetic editing. The idea that you can go out and literally regrow an eyeball in the back of your head so that when you're running, you can see the tiger. Now, that may seem totally crazy, but I have friends who are literally working on this stuff right now and in university settings and stuff like that. What I'm trying to say is genetic editing allows us to modify our body in any way we want to do. And it's going to be done in an embryonic way as well. So you can literally augment children's intelligence. And of course, as I get to the main part of this, the problem here is that China has already led the way with genetic editing technology. They're ahead of America. And China has 4 times our population and literally as many engineers as our workforce is almost. If we continue to let China get ahead of us, we are never going to catch them. Now, that wouldn't be such a big problem if China was a democracy, but they're not a democracy. They're a kind of a socialistic country mixed in with a bunch of authoritarianism. And I don't think people realize that if we let genetic editing and artificial intelligence run away from us, and the Chinese are also leading in AI, I'd say, then we're going to wake up in 10 and 20 years and say, wow, America is now just a second-rate country. But let me get to the third, really, really important here in terms of where the future is. Elon Musk has a company called Neuralink, and there's Brian Johnson has another company called Kernel. They're all in California. There's other companies, even Facebook has bought a few, that are working on what we call kind of a brain implant or a headset that connects your thoughts to brain waves and then can translate them directly to a machine interface so that you can almost search the internet with your mind. Now, they've had some success with this, and the amount of success that's happening is literally exponentially growing. And you can, if you look at Wall Street, you're seeing all these mid-level traders be fired because AI is already doing their jobs. The only way for humans to really keep their jobs, and I mean kind of like white-collar people, in the intellectual way, surgeons and lawyers and stuff like that, the only way for them to keep their jobs are to, at some point, connect their brain directly in real time to the internet and into the clouds and be able to go at the speed that AI is going to go. Otherwise, all jobs are going to be lost. Even my wife's an OBGYN, so she's a surgeon. There's a very good chance, despite 19 years of her training and hundreds of thousands of dollars of school debt, she could be replaced by a robot of delivering babies within 15 years. And if we can't connect our brains directly to the internet, we will probably all at some point be replaced. So beyond just politics, we're talking about some kind of very fundamental truths for the species. And, you're totally right when you say once AI is created in artificial general intelligence, it's game over because it only takes one to control all the other computers in the world. This isn't like the nuclear arms race or the atomic arms race where you can keep building a bigger bomb. You just have one that you built into general artificial intelligence. It can then send viruses to the rest of them to shut them down, and one only remains and survives. And this is where it becomes very, very dangerous. This is sort of like a winner takes all scenario. And I can tell you other countries are Russia. I mean, that's why Putin said, look, whoever wins the AI arms race wins it all. So we're just entering this crazy time. And unfortunately, none of our major politicians are talking about it.
No, and it's a fact of the matter too, is whoever gets there first will exponentially always be that much further ahead of everybody else. And so even though people are trying to pretend like they're not doing it, everybody's out there trying to make this AI super intelligence happen. Right, Epic?
Well, that's right. And, the first thing that we thought of was Nick Bostrom brought up the paperclip scenario, right? Where the AI just, it's not a general artificial intelligence. Really, it just has control of everything, gets out the internet, and decides it wants to have the most resources possible to build paper clips and turns the whole world into a bunch of paper clips, right? Well, that's a horrible idea, but that's possible. And so Elon Musk with Neuralink, I like his original thought, kind of the idea of having he called it the neural lace or mesh originally, right? Where it's going to be like a buffer zone between us and an AI layer in the cortex. And I think he's gone full board, into it with Neuralink. Now, have you talked to him at all, Zoltan? You guys ever met?
I've never met Elon at all, and I've met, most of them. In fact, I'm friends with Brian Johnson, some of the other key players in this field, but not Elon. So I don't know exactly, what the latest is, because let's be honest, this stuff is changing month to month. And what seems just to have $100 million, $200 million now has billions going into it, because all the other players have said, oh, wait a sec, if I'm the one who comes up with the headset or the implant that allows me to interface directly with the machines, every single worker in the world is going to need it. We're talking about not just, trillion-dollar industries, but multi-trillion-dollar industries.
So I'm sorry, I just want to continue a little bit on this thought here. Like if it, what Musk said was that it's like 6 years away from, after FDA trials and stuff like that. So they're going to try it on primates and things like that. And it occurred to me that it's almost a science fiction solution, but there's a perfect solution there in the sense that he wants to make this kind of a train of ships going to Mars and back, right? That you can take these people who otherwise were going to die or be terribly disabled, Stephen Hawking types, brilliant people, and save their brain, basically, but hook them into this neural lace or Neuralink. I'm sorry. Of course, you have 7 minutes late going out to Mars, but we worry about not having a link, but you have somebody that can think, that's out controlling these ships and these colonies and bringing these things out there. It seems like this is something that the public might approve of that they wouldn't approve of normally. They're so afraid of the cyborgs, us becoming the Borg, right? And I think the two questions are, how do we democratize it, and how do we keep from becoming the Borg?
Well, the two very good questions. I'm not sure democracy can actually survive in the age of AI, where everybody is interconnected in what we might call the hive mind, because democracy is based on individual values, but all of a sudden we'd be interconnected. And, so I'm not sure that works. Besides, we get to this point when, if all automation has taken all jobs, what is left? Capitalism certainly isn't left, because capitalism thrives off individuals kind of producing something, whereas now it's either corporations or it's just giant entities, or maybe it's only the 1%ers working and nobody else. So we're entering this incredibly fuzzy phase. But I can tell you the one thing that's really even more dangerous than, I'd say, the neural lace and the Neuralink and these kind of brain implants and whatnot, is the idea that we're not sure if AI is going to become artificial general intelligence first, or we're going to actually get to a point when we can actually truly plug our brain in real time, in real function, to the machine itself, and then actually control the creation of that artificial general intelligence. Nobody knows what's going to win. Capitalism is sort of driving these movements forward. But I can tell you that if we try to plug our brain in and there's already an artificial general intelligence there, it may not want us. It may turn us back or something like that. So it's so bizarre, because it all sounds like science fiction, and yet I can tell you that the duel is going to happen almost certainly within 10 years. And, we got Trump talking about immigrants and things like that, taking jobs. This is just absurd to those of us who live in Silicon Valley, saying, wait a sec, this has philosophical ramifications for the entire species. Forget the immigration issue or whatever you think of it. That's not the problem. The problem is that humanity is moving very fast towards something wonderful. But if we don't learn how to control that, something that's important to us, we're going to blow it.
What did you think of the book, and then subsequently the documentary Future Shock, and Alvin Toffler? Did you think, as a futurist, I went back recently and looked at Future Shock, and I was literally blown away by how accurate he actually was in that first book.
Well, it's first off, it's a classic in the field, and it's exciting for me when I see other people that have pegged it, because here I am trying to peg in my own stuff. I'm writing various things for the New York Times now and hoping that they'll last in 20 years. They'll be looked back upon as like being correct and not being absurd, but it's very tough as a futurist. But, it's exciting to see what things have come. And I think, though, what's happened now has been very exciting for the human race. But the problem that we're starting to talk about with AI and genetic editing, I mean, we have, for example, I have friends that are trying to work on using genetic editing to put plant DNA into their skin so that they can go out into the sun and photosynthesize. And that's how they can get some energy. Now, right now, there's no proof that this works. But you have to understand, with there's about 20% of the population on planet Earth is hungry and starving all the time. And there's 8,000 kids that die every day from malnutrition. If you could learn how to photosynthesize through the human body, you could change. And from a humanitarian perspective, you could do the greatest good that perhaps anyone has ever done on planet Earth through something like photosynthesizing one's body with plant DNA. These are some of the radical experiments that transhumanists and biohackers are literally playing with right now and trying to see if our human body can develop into something that's quite different. And the idea that we only have 2 arms or we only have 5 fingers. I mean, we're within few years of already even not only having better robotic arms, but having genetically different types of arms that are much more muscular, that can throw a football 2 miles, that can do all sorts of different things. And we're coming to a point when exoskeleton technology, maybe within 7 to 10 years, we'll put on the suit and you will be able to literally run across water, run across a lake. People will do marathons across lakes with this type of technology. You have to run about 80 miles per hour to run across water. And these kinds of technologies are going to take us there. So humanity's entering this incredibly radical time. Doesn't mean we have a lot of vision with it. Doesn't mean our politicians are on board. But it's going to be exciting. It might also lead to dystopia. I'm not sure.
Well, what's a trip too is the fact that the computing power that is in the hands of the average Joe, like you said, who's playing around with some of this stuff. I imagine in the future there has to be some supreme council of these guys, and men and women and whoever else might join in, wearing these white robes, sitting over the top of all this technology and trying to decide how to unleash it upon humanity without having detrimental effects, because everybody's hot to trot to get everything out onto the marketplace without the proper, they want to be the first one out there, but sometimes they miss some of the steps that it might take to make sure it's good for everybody. So, I mean, you sound like you're super concerned about people. What do you think? I know you got to go here in just a minute. But before you do, we're really interested in seasteading. And I know that maybe you can come back another time. We can talk about that. But I wanted to get your take on what do you think about these the idea of a universal income for people when they get displaced in the future for some of these robotics that are going to take over, especially in the service industry?
Well, first off, I have been a big supporter of universal basic income since my 2016 presidential candidacy. During my libertarian gubernatorial run in California in 2018, I was a big supporter. And of course, I'm now a big supporter of it. Perhaps the only Republican out there that's really a supporter of universal basic income. But I can't imagine a future where a basic income doesn't come into place because, of automation. I mean, at some point, the people are just going to revolt, and they're either going to take down all the rich people and take their resources, or the governments and the rich people are going to say, listen, it's time to split this up in a way that we think is all fair and keeps people fed and housed and good hygiene and healthy, and so they can raise kids or whatever they're going to do. So I'm a complete believer that a universal basic income must come. I'm not a big fan of raising taxes for it. I have a federal land dividend plan where we use federal land that's leased out or sold in order to pay for it. However, man, the public starts putting out pitchforks. Raising taxes is an okay idea for me. So it's not like I'm completely one-sided with it. I just think no matter what happens, at some point, a basic income with all the widespread automation and robots taking jobs is going to be necessary. And that might, people seem to think of it, oh, I lost my job. What a terrible future. But I think the other side of that is, wait a sec, you get to buy a guitar and go to the Bahamas and spend 5 years becoming an expert at the guitar. And if you wanted to always do that, that would be great. Or maybe you want to do your third PhD, or maybe you just wanted to read fictional novels or be a writer. The point of the story is the basic income shouldn't be seen as, oh, I can't get a job now because robots came out. It should be seen as maybe the modern advancement of society, where luxury and leisure have become the commonplace elements of the human race, where we can actually finally enjoy ourselves. Maybe that's the natural state of evolution, where finally we reach the state, a social state, where a lot more people are happier and they don't have to take shit from their bosses all day long, or pay taxes all day long. They can just get an income and do what they want to do.
And here's a really good idea. So there's people moving into the future. There's people that are trying to give regular human beings the rights to own their information, and thereby capitalizing on their own information by the people utilizing that information. So maybe what we could do is we could sponsor this universal income by trading the information that all these services are getting from people using apps and internet services and that type of thing.
Well, what's interesting is when you actually look at how and in which way universal basic income has evolved, there are so many different ways to do it. Andrew Yang, for example, has a VAT where he would raise taxes. I have a federal land dividend where you lease out federal land that America already owns. There are people that, based on the blockchain, which I think is a big technology definitely coming through the pipeline, where you would use blockchain every single transaction. And maybe there's different other ways too. I mean, like you had just mentioned, data. Frankly, there are many, many different ways. There are carbon taxes if the planet's killing itself. There are so many different ways to fund it. But whatever happens, I think it's very important that American culture and worldwide culture, frankly, it's a worldwide phenomenon, takes to this point when we all understand, okay, capitalism has created robots and automation, and that's going to free us up of our time, but it's also going to leave us without the ability to earn an income. So now let's kind of create a base for the 8 billion humans that we have, so that we can continue to thrive as a species without killing each other and without worrying every second where your shelter is going to come from, your food is going to come from. And then we can worry about art and science, and especially transhumanism. This is why I like universal basic income.
That's right.
Because I want to hit the transhumanist age. And I need thinkers, we need engineers, we need scientists, not necessarily people that work for money, but people that work for passion to get to the future. And I think a lot of futurists would do it for free if they could, and a lot of scientists would too, especially if they had a basic income supporting them. So I'm a big believer in the universal basic income.
And you know what? There's going to be a lot of passionate people trying to hook up with that foxy green lady photosynthesizing.
Yeah, of course.
Well, the thing is, anything we could do to help get your platform out there, because your discussion that you're having is the one that we need to be having. People need to get into discussing what's going on now, what's going on in the near term, and what's going on ultimately in the long term is going to affect us. And we got to make these decisions now, because technology moves ahead. It doesn't matter what the politicians do up in Washington if no one's having a discussion. And most of those people up there, have their assistants do everything for them. They don't even know how to use half the technology that's out there. Really want to thank you for coming. We kind of kept you over a little bit, and we hope you'll come back soon. There's a friend of ours is over on the David Icke Iconic Network. His name's Billy Ray Valentine. I know for sure he would love to have you on. So if you have some time in the near future, some dates open, let me know, and I'll see if I can hook that up for you, because I really want you to get your message out.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Just tell them to email me. I'd love to do, obviously I'm running for president. I try to do as much media as possible. And for your listeners, just, go to Zoltan2020.com or just Google my name. The great thing is, I've been a journalist now for 25 years. And so I write for mainstream media. And so if you have any subject, whether it's space travel, whether it's genetic editing, whether it's marriage and having kids, I got 2 kids and a wife, in the transhumanist set, just Google my name and you'll find the ideas that I've been putting out there. A lot of them are weird. A lot of them people don't like. A lot of them controversial, but they're always new and interesting. So just check it out and see if it gives you some new ideas. But, gentlemen, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a great chat.
Thanks again, Zoltan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very much appreciated. And thanks, Epic, for putting this together. I hope you come back soon. We really want to talk to you again. So thanks so much. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks you guys so much. You have a great night.